Good morning, Tuvalu, and welcome to Star Trek Picard, Season 2, Episode 10, Farewell. Let's just turn down those engine hums a bit. Where today, this one's quite interesting for several reasons. We went through episodes 1 to 9 of Picard over the course of 5 days. So we binged it, very quickly. We got through it. And then we took a break for a week before episode 10, the finale, which normally would probably feel very strange. Let me move my bike back a bit. Probably feel very strange. But I've learned a lot. I've had a lot of time to think about this season. Like, let's analyze it structurally real quick. Just let me get the list up. So, episode 1, you have to establish the peaceful village before you burn it down. We've talked a lot about that. Not just ignore quality, guys. Ignore anything else. Just structurally, Picard. Episode 2 and 3 were pretty good. You establish the stakes. You kind of get into that dystopian world. You see what's going on. You see what the stakes are. And then 3, you kind of go, they work out what's happening, and then they have to realize what they have to do. That's like 2 and 3. That's, good, solid. Stuff's happening. They're interesting. Episode 4... again, I think that was pretty good. You're just kind of moving along. You're marching the plot along. Episode 5 is set up for episode 6. It really is. It's got some filler with Rios. They just have to get a lot of people out of the way so Picard can meet the Watcher and set up for episode 6. Episode 6 is where things get interesting, because episode 6, they resolve the plot. Episode 6, they resolve the plot offhand in about 5 minutes with the scene with Renee and Picard. And they're resolved. Like, they have to actually introduce a new threat because they've resolved the threat. Like, the future's saved at this point. They have to bring in the Borg stuff in episode 6. They do like a full pivot almost in what the show is about, what the threat is. Episode 7 and 8, as we discussed before, 3 things happen. God, what I'm having to remember now. What were the 3 things we decided? Like, we learned more about what's happening with Q. I think it was like Girardi and the Borg, that thing kind of kicked off. I don't remember. What were Rios, 7, and Raffi? Oh, yeah, and Rios' relationship developed. Those were 3 things that happened over those 2 episodes, because the show resolved its plot in episode 6. Like, it has to kind of start this new one, but at the same time, they haven't beaten the, villain of the piece, who's Q. He's still just kind of out there, not really doing anything. He's just out there. We don't really know what he's doing. He only shows up to talk when he's, summoned. And even then, he doesn't get to talk to Picard. Very, dull, slow, and they can't really be doing anything because then the series would just end too quickly. Because, they'd resolve the Borg stuff. You have the things with that FBI agent. But you can cut that and nothing about the story changes. It just becomes shorter. It's filler. I mean, it's a nice story, I guess, but it's filler. It serves no structural purpose. Moving into episode 9, then we get ramped up again, because now that we're at the end, they can start wrapping up. Yeah, structurally, it's great. But they resolve the new threat of the Borg and Girardi stuff. After episode 9, I felt a strong sense of closure. There was nothing for episode 10 to do. If Picard just ended at episode 9, it'd be a little strange because there are dangling threads. They're still stuck in the past. But honestly, if that was a thing that they just, in season 3, they're just in the future again, I wouldn't even mind too much. It's yeah, they got home. Whatever. The time travel police showed up and brought him home. Q sent him home. But, we keep getting kind of vague mentions that Q could be up to anything. You know, he could be doing anything right now to stop the mission. But as a viewer, I don't feel that, because he could very easily stop the mission if he wanted to. He could have brought in a gun to any of these therapy sessions. As I said, he could, like, do a bomb threat or something. Like, he could do anything. He could do a lot. And, again, the actual, like, Q's abilities in this episode are extraordinarily ill-defined. I don't know the extent of his abilities in this situation, and so I don't know, could he literally snap his fingers and win? Or does he have, like, limited abilities? Is he functionally like a human right now? Like, what can Q do in this situation? And it, like, the whole reason Adam Soong, his character, attacked the chateau was Q's plan. Like, that is what Q was doing. And they won. So, like, Q could be doing anything, but I have no reason to believe that he is, or that he could succeed, because everyone, in every other regard, seems to be treating this plotline as done. Like, since episode 6, we won. There's just a new threat. And so episode 10 has loose threads to tie. You know, they gotta get to the future. We gotta resolve the whole Q thing. I guess that's it, actually. I know more that it's gonna do. Like, I know what happens to Rios, vaguely some other things. We gotta meet Girardi in the future, but, like, there's nothing really structurally this episode has to do. It's just all the things that they dropped the ball on in the previous 9 episodes. It's almost like an epilogue of here's what we forgot, I guess. Actually, that'd be kind of fun. It'd be weird, but could you imagine if a season, like every season of Star Trek, after the last episode, there was an episode with just, like, extra scenes from the previous episodes that resolve plot holes that, like, they didn't get at the start. Like, I don't know, some character weirdly knew something, and it didn't sit right, and so they threw in a scene that's, like, I don't know, they discovered it, like, simultaneously to some other scene. They were researching something. That's an interesting idea. You know, it's all that's kind of fan speculation to fix problems. You put that in the show, like, officially? Let me turn off these lovely engine hums that Alex said were like the start of a horror movie, and I don't know if I can forgive them for that. There we go. Remember to turn off system output on OBS. Actually, do I have subtitles on for my sake? Yes, there we go. Yeah, so episode 10, we'll see. Alex is here today.
Huh?
Yep, say hi, Alex.
Hi.
So I'm unfortunately limited in what I can talk about in this episode, particularly regarding Q, but we'll see how things pan out. Yes. I don't know, there was no afterwards. I just took a drink and then had nothing to follow up with. Shall we get started? I mean, it's been on the screen for you for a while, but, dang it, I always forget, start recording. Yeah, so for YouTube, what we're gonna do is get a copy of Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 10, Farewell. We're gonna do a countdown of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And on go, we're all gonna hit play, and then it's just gonna be my commentary. No episode audio or video for copyright reasons, so it's gonna be very boring, probably, if you don't have the episode in front of you. So, I'm gonna take another drink for just that extra bit of time to prepare. And, where's my recording timer? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. Never feels in time, but it's literally I'm just using the recording counter. It's perfectly in time. Good, I do have audio. The Stowe Fleet does look pretty good, like, in these cinematic qualities, I'll say, but... yeah. Yeah, I've never been a big fan of the Stowe fleet for the most part. Star Trek Online, if you didn't know. I always forget about, the previously ons, but this is literally a preview of all the loose ends they have yet to clean up. Like, this is just what the episode's gonna be about. They're literally having to remind us as well why they have to save the Europa mission, because it's been like 5 episodes. And you've probably actually forgotten, you know? But apparently he doesn't do a good job, actually, thinking about it. I'm just remembering now that we're gonna have a whole nother Brent Spiner character in Season 3. Like, just a new guy. I don't think it's Adam or whoever the heck is, the guy in Season 1. All 3 of these seasons have had Brent Spiner. Brent Spiner has played more characters in Picard than there are seasons in Picard. If you count B4, I think he's played double. Also, that was like a 2-minute previously on, because, yeah, they don't have a lot to talk about. But, again, this can't be the prime timeline, because Guinan doesn't remember... Whatever. More importantly, apparently they're trying to... Sorry, prophecy? Can we back up? I missed this prophecy entirely. When was this?
One ring to rule them all.
Yeah, but your name's probably Renee or something, but when was this? Who would even have given a prophecy? How did we miss this? Anyone chat, concurrent viewers. It says there's 2 of you, please. How was this not in the previously on as well? That was like the most important bit. It's possible that they break quarantine on launch day. I'll admit I don't know for a fact they don't, but that does defeat the entire purpose of quarantine if you do it on launch day. Huh. So yes, they do. I think they still do it. They quarantine astronauts for like a good amount of time before they send them up into space, so they don't bring sickness. Like, mostly because they'd be miserable and you can't just bring them home and take a sick day. Not really for like contamination reasons, I don't think. But like, if you break it on launch day, that defeats the whole purpose. But also, maybe they have to, just to, like, get the people in the capsule. I know for Apollo, they did, like, a quarantine exit, because they were afraid of bringing moon germs to Earth, but... Well, not really afraid. I think they knew there weren't, like, moon germs, but they didn't, like, know there weren't moon germs. Wait, she was at a party, like, 2 days ago. Hang on, I gotta check. How long is NASA quarantine for astronauts? 21 days. Oh no, following splashdown. That's gonna be Apollo. Yeah, that's Apollo. What about before launch? Yeah, I don't want Apollo. Uh, 2 weeks before liftoff, I think, is what I'm seeing. Don't tell me they're at Europa already. Well, I guess... How future are we? Where's my XCV 330? Props to them, though, for not using the old Apollo, like, staticky beepy noise. Oh, good, they're on the launch pad. Again, wait, this CGI, that's not good. Was Picard mega quarantine or something? But yeah, it's a spacey communication noise that like everyone uses because Apollo did it, but it was a very specific, antiquated, weird thing about how they did communication, which is why they had that noise. I think it's similar to like dial-up. I think I had another thing, actually, I realized in the past week. Why was Picard... Why does he think his dad's a monster? Because I thought he very clearly blamed himself for his mother's death, but, like, you can pin blame on his dad, but, like, even if he did, monster seems like a big, like, no, afraid, maybe, or, like, but monster? Weird target, but okay. I guess it would ruin the mission. It's actually, that's a good target. Not very lethal. Ruins the mission. Nice. Like, did I miss an episode? We watched 9, but... Maybe this is what happens when we do a commentary on the first watch through. This is why I'm not gonna do it for the new series I care about. So he drew people to his lab where he stored his backup plan. Okay. Okay. Oh, well, there we go. No, there we go. I'll give him that. Oh my gosh, is Raffi gonna be useful? No, I'll admit, yeah, nice. That was actually not a problem. They came up with a reason to do this. I'm also surprised they have spare uniforms. What name is on her badge? No, they didn't. What's he gonna do? Retract them? It's literally on the launch pad. I think I talked about this before at one point. Like, no, you don't just get to break quarantine. I know this is like a super corrupt America, but like, even then, there's corruption, and then there's this literally isn't gonna work if you break quarantine. Yeah, thank you. That is... Okay, technology advances, but that does not look like a Europa-capable rocket. Now, I'm gonna interject here. If we want to circle back to what I said about a year ago on episode 5, whatever, I would rather die than have someone like Laris in my, or this whatever Talon in my life. Like, this is horrifically creepy and messed up, and like, like, it's Picard season 2 has way too many scenes that are horrifically messed up and creepy that they're pitching is the good ending, and it's really, yeah, that's awful, honestly. And again, with how beautiful the like 5-minute pep talk thing was, this is the second thing that's kind of undermined it. Like, immediately after that pep talk, she watched the guy who gave it get hit by a car. And now, like, just before a moment where she needs that confidence, she has that excitement, she's like, hey, I've been stalking you your whole life. And know your innermost, deepest, like, personal thoughts and emotions. And yeah, like, screw the other girl as well, I guess. I really hope it's the other girl who goes on the spaceship. And not Talon. If he wanted to end the mission, he could have done it right there. Just lace his hands with some disease. You know, he is a geneticist and all. Maybe he did, but he could have ended the mission right there. I just want to highlight this in case that's not what happens. Oh, thank you. I was going to be very upset if that obvious face pat was not neurotoxin. I'll give this episode credit. That's the second time it's, like, gone back on me and been like, no, we're right. But what did Laris do here? Just, like, be like, yeah, I guess. Alright. I'll sit in my room. I guess I failed my mission. I'll go home now. Don't want to follow Laris. Wait, she what? Okay, the capsule's in a fairing. How is she gonna get in that capsule, actually? Oh, well, that's what she was doing. Damn, they got her in that capsule fast, though. Wait, does she love Picard? I hope not. That would just, like, ruin... God. Also, why would you put the capsule in a fairing? You can't emergency escape. Am I ruining the moment? I think I'm very nitpicky today, because I said before, there's no, like, structural reason for this episode to exist. It's not really doing anything. And if we circle back again, Q had, like, no part in this, other than telling Brent Spiner to go do stuff. Like, Q could be doing anything, but I never got the sense he was. Maybe he's somewhere else and we'll see. I mean, this episode has a habit of doing that today, but... yeah. There's nothing I'm waiting for, or to see what happens, I guess, because they fixed everything, you know? I too delete my files in the terminal. I thought that was Mirage Barrett for a second. I was very like, wait, what? But I will say I'm glad they brought her back. I've already forgotten her name again, but I thought she just kind of walked off and she was done. That's how little importance her character had to the story. But I'm glad they did bring her back for something. Oh. That's not the reaction you wanted me to have, but oh. I guess another book in the eugenics wars were not the 1990s, but... Okay, wait, timelines. Alright. Go meet Will Wheaton. Have fun, you two. Maybe he could have done something about this. At least we don't have to wait for a post-credit sequence. I have seen this scene before, I will admit. I'm very... Well, no, we'll wait. We'll wait till it's over. It is kind of weird, though, I'll admit, seeing old Will Wheaton in Star Trek. Now, I'm known as Will Wheaton. You might recognize me from hit shows such as The Big Bang Theory and Will Wheaton's Tabletop Games.
It's just called tabletop.
And me, I decided to take the day off. Okay. I'll give him that. Okay, please don't just believe this story instantly. I mean, what else is she gonna do, I guess? But also... Did she just believe that, though? What she's seen in the past, like, few months. The only part of the story she's seen... I guess she saw a bit of Q. Like, someone hacked her dad's computers, and she learned her dad was evil. That's the part of the story that she's seen. God, I know it was apparently a fight to get Will Wheaton between, like, many of the series, and I'm very disappointed this is the one that won. Because I feel like all the others would have done something with it. I think that was a cork, by the way, but... I still don't think I've seen any section of that, any sign of this relationship except now. But, you know. What?
Never gonna dance.
Did you see
again.
lesbians? And you were
Fishy
like, yeah.
fish got no freedom. Easy too far. I'm just singing whatever music comes to mind when I see.
These are two people who never had a conversation with each other, and then at the end of season 1 held hands, and now they're dating, I guess. It was interesting.
Lesbians.
Well,
Lesbians?
it's just
Lesbians.
I don't understand that relationship.
Maybe they're not dating in like a romantic or sexual sense. Maybe it's strictly platonic.
We've never seen them either. At the start of the second episode, it was like, I guess, entirely off screen. They had like fallings outs in a relationship. It was very. They're both very invested in a relationship we've never seen as the audience. It's very strange.
Was this show written by a man?
Oh, a few, but hang on. You look away for these bits.
I'm focused over on that screen, not that.
These are the bits you really can't see. But I have not seen this scene, I will say. He's like, Q, I remember Tapestry. Let's not do this again. I've been told Beverly Crusher's in season 3. Yeah, but bullshit, because he brought himself to the past and that dethroned your whole plan. But, you know, let's go on. So does everyone, eventually, like. That's the only every timeline I'll accept. Let's not talk about Catherine, okay?
We don't talk about Catherine. No, no, no.
Let's not talk about his wife and kid.
We don't talk about Bruno.
He has a wife and kid. He does. Well, apparently. I've heard the season 3 trailer. Is he gonna... Oh, wait. I'm actually enjoying this. I really hope he didn't talk to his mom, because that could actually also be real messed up, but... Rios, I'll get to you. You come later. No, you don't. You're goddamn right. You don't. This just abandon his crew in that horrific state. And worst captain, hands down. Did he? I thought he just said you never fit in. You never fit in, but thank you for making me fit in with you. I can't wait for World War III, Jean-Luc. I bet they can script their soldiers forcefully, you know? No more volunteer armies.
Are you talking about Ancient China with Mulan?
No, I'm talking about 2023. 2024. World War III.
China's gonna have Mulan again? Because
Sure.
she's
gonna fight World War
III. Notice for her dad?
It's weird no one brings this up. It might kill the moment, but someone's like, what about World War III? And then the girl in the background is just like, I'm sorry, what? Can we go? I mean, she wouldn't want to leave, but you think maybe this would come up. Like, hey, World War III's in a bit. You know what the future is? Utopia. Where'd you even get that cigar, too? He just pulled that out of his ass. It's like... Thank God. Go away, Rios. Go die in your bar fight. At least there's hope for him to come back. Aww. Yes, you will, Q. I've just realized, has John Delancey always been this tall? That was beautiful. I like that whole sequence. Again, it kind of ignored the fact that him going back in time completely derailed Q's plans. It kind of ignored that Picard wasn't Q's focus, like sole focus, but, you know, Picard said that, Q kind of went against that. There was something else I didn't like, I can't remember, but I think the sentiment, the way it was handled, everything, I really like that development. I liked that sequence. I like that we got that. Is very likely the last Q appearance ever. I really like that. Oh, I guess they're listening this time. Remember, from their perspective, he just asked for them to stand down and no one listened, and then he did it more calmly, and yeah, okay. Their captain's gone. He kind of looks like Dr. Octopus as well. She looks very integrated into that suit. Which maybe she could be, and everyone else isn't, but, you know, this is where they have to redeem this whole plot, you know. Also, from the crew's perspective, Agnes was just there. Is this season 3? Is there a setup? Please don't say it's going to destroy the galaxy. Fair enough. That's a good amount. No, she just needed to send all their data to Starfleet Command, but she couldn't do that because then she never would have gone back in time in the first place. To what rank? Actually, he is he's a retired admiral. But he's been brought up. Why didn't Janeway do that? Hang on a second. Did Janeway have the authority to just be like, 7? You're a lieutenant now. Fuck Starfleet. You're now in Starfleet. Congratulations. Hey, that weird Excelsior class. I say weird, it's the Excelsior with, like, Enterprise E nacelles, which makes sense, but... yeah. I hope... Why? Okay, this thing has the power to destroy most of the sector, and they're gonna save it. Maybe it's directed, like a beam outward, but I would have thought you'd put the shield around the event. Also, much better CGI. And then everyone died. Oh, thank you. There we go. I'm glad... Discovery could learn a thing or two from that scene. Well, my uncle's a big liar. I thought he was a hologram. I do like that this... Well, I don't like, you know, that's what I mean. But that this immediately comes after a scene where they talk about how it doesn't always have to be some big galactic threat or meaning. And, like, if Picard had destroyed that key, the galaxy would have just been destroyed. Like, what is this? This just feels really... You needed your big finale. You couldn't have it be that lovely... interpersonal thing with Q. I don't know. Like, that feels weird. They can see that from real far, though. That happened? Alright. Weird, actually. That was very directed. Like, if there was a planet in its way, yeah, but... Huh. That was just... That was... I thought they wanted to join the Federation, you know? Wait, did they do it? Ah. This could be interesting, you know. Oh. TNG theme is weird, but I'm not gonna complain. I mean, I hope that's set up for something, like another series, season 3, whatever, but otherwise it'd be really weird. But it doesn't... Look, I've said this too many times. Ooh, I know that. Oh, thank you. It was World War III, so you know, probably a lot. Drafted into World War III, died instantly. Okay, I get Guinan wouldn't have shared this particular information. Ukrainian Scrimshaw, we'll circle back to time, I think after the watch-along. Welcome, though. I've realized, though... Shoot, what was I gonna say? Oh, God. No, I had a point. Oh, yes. We'll get to this. Oh, God. Thank God that man is dead. A fucking disgrace. Yes, he did. That actor did a good job with his part. Very wide range, but he was the worst captain I've ever seen. His character. Also, they changed the Picard cups. I hate them. But if we circle back, I get why Guinan wouldn't have shared that particular information, but a big, like, belief of modern Star Trek is the 21st century history, and, like, you know, late 20th is very fragmented and little is known because of World War III. I think this partially comes from Classic as well, but that's such a core part. That's the reason behind the retcon of the eugenics wars taking place in our future rather than the 90s, even though Khan himself said it was the 90s. But Guinan lived on Earth, and the Vulcans were studying us, and, like, how were our records so fragmented when it's both in living memory, especially in, like, Enterprise and TOS era, and you have people like Guinan who actually lived through it and would surely be aware of, like, the gaps in history that she lived through, you know? I get why she wouldn't have shared that for, like, time reasons. But greater, like, the whole thing about the, like, time being fragmented, like, the history being really fragmented and unknown, really doesn't make a lot of sense since, like, First Contact or Enterprise onward. I don't actually have a problem with the picture being there. I'm curious what your... I'd have a problem if it was there before they came back to the future. If it was, like, in the background in one of the first episodes. Look, Laris, I'm gonna be honest with you. The TNG cast is big, and they're all going to come back. And we could either have you or Worf. And Michael Dorn's been pestering us for his own show for decades, so we're gonna bring back Worf. Goodbye, Laris. That is very poorly done. What happened to the chateau? Where did it go? What is this? It's empty. They were in an entirely separate room. Weren't they in the greenhouse? What happened to the CGI? Because, like, that battle was good. Oh, I see. You had to do this zoom out. I'm sorry, it wasn't worth it. There we go. Now it became high quality. You had to get that distance. That's pretty good. What? Yeah, the CGI in this last little section was all over the place. Ba-doom. And there we go. Yeah, I'm actually surprisingly very happy with what they've done with Q. And that was the best part. That was the highlight of the series, flat out. That is not saying much. I will fully admit that. But even in, like, a good season, a very good season, that would have been, like, a highlight, at least. I was very happy with that. I was upset with Q's condition at the start, but they told a story that justified it. They earned it. You know, it's what I've said before. I think you can do any story, any genre in Star Trek, or broadly, you know, any show. But some of them are harder to do. You know, Star Trek lends itself to some stories better. And this is very character-centric. You know, that character lends himself to certain stories good. This was not a story that Q lends himself to well at all. But they justified it, I think. That was a very good ending. I remembered the third thing as well that I said I hated. They forgot he has a wife and kid, I guess, or they probably have a reason. Like, I'm sure Don Delancey didn't forget. They have a reason that he was alone, but we're not told it, which is a problem. And I really kind of want to go after this and figure out, like, what the producer has to say, because he's pretty active answering questions. Like, that's how we know how internally how they viewed Time Zero. Like, what happened to his wife and kid? I could see his wife leaving him, but his kid, like, that, I mean, it could have gone other way, but you needed something there, you know? Like, that was literally Voyager's entire development of this character just sidelined. I think it was very cute in those last scenes, and beautiful. I kind of actually hope that is the last time we see Q. I'd love getting back. It's a pleasure having John Delancey in Q. You can do him anywhere in the show. You know, it's just earlier in his personal history. But if that is the last time, it will be even more beautiful going back to it. It will give us something to watch the season again for, and it's a beautiful send-off. You know, it actually gives me kind of a lot of hope for how they do season 3. I'll get to your comments in a sec, Ukrainian Scrimshaw. I just want to finish this thought process. Because the big thing of season 3 is they need to give the characters, like, this is the last time we're going to see all of them in all likelihood. And it's the last time of significance, you know, we'll see them. And all good things with a very good send-off. You know, that it kind of kept, it's like, hey, they're still out there going on adventures. This is not that. I guess technically Nemesis was their send-off, but this is not that. This is, we're done. You know, we're all in our 80s. We're not going to be around for much longer, and this is our last mainstay. Like, it gives me hope that it will be good, and it will be thoughtful. And yes, I'm very shockingly happy with how Q's story ended up. Ukrainian Scrimshaw. Hang on, let me just write 51 through 24, because I think that's where I want to end the YouTube video. And I'm going to be bothered trying to find that. 51:30-ish. By the way, I'll probably be uploading these as, like, cutting all the pre and post commentary sometime next week, just all in one batch, because I didn't want to spam the subscription box with no videos going out. Ukrainian Scrimshaw, a few comments here. My picture problem is they started in original timeline. Yes. Got taken to alternate timeline. Yes. Rio stays behind. Yes. Then back to the original timeline, or is this timeline now the future of alternate timeline? I'm going to get back to that. I'm going to read all your comments. But also, if it's original timeline, how is Agnes pre-Queen there in the first place? I don't know, among so many other time problems. First, second, let's pretend everything that happens in the 24th century is perfectly internally consistent.
That's a big ask.
Oh, it's not. But, in fact, that's where, like, all my problems lie. I don't think there's any problems. You have everyone in the original timeline. No, let's analyze this from the universe's perspective, okay? From the perspective of the universe, assuming everything in the 24th century is perfectly internally... Sorry, 2024 is perfectly internally consistent. Picard and crew, including Agnes, arrive in 2024. They do some stuff, and then they leave. You know, we're going to just brush over that stuff. But Rio stays. Then later on, you know, Picard is born. But Girardi stays, and there's, like, you know, Herald, the Hive Mind Collective, is just out there in the galaxy. And that exists. Then Girardi is born. You know, and then Picard, you know, everyone is born. Exist. Then we join. Let's go Rios as well. He lives his life. He dies. He meets Guinan. He takes pictures. You know, Guinan takes this frame, puts it. She keeps it. She keeps his picture with her. Everyone exists. We get to the 24th century. She hangs that picture in the bar. Girardi goes back in time to 2024. The Borg Queen, who has always been around, the Herald Collective, still exists. The only weird bit is what Q does with Elnor. You know, Elnor just pops into existence at some point in the 24th century. But that's Q. You know, he can do that. I have no problems. If Rios' picture is there in episode 1, from a production standpoint, I love that. I love that little Easter egg, that setup. It's very, like, Back to the Future. I love that. I'll say, actually, Back to the Future has a lovely detail that would remind me of, where in Back to the Future, the DeLorean is very unreliable. It doesn't start, and it often doesn't start at plot-critical moments. What I just said is a lie. The DeLorean is not unreliable. The DeLorean is perfectly reliable, their time machine DeLorean. If you watch Back to the Futures 1 and 2, and you compare when events are taking place, you'll notice that if the DeLorean is running, then another version of the DeLorean cannot start. And as soon as the version that is running stops, the other DeLorean can start again. So every time in either movie someone is trying to start the DeLorean and it's not starting, it is because in the other movie, someone is currently running the DeLorean, and that is preventing the other version, for all other versions, from starting. It's very much like that, I think. My problem is the timeline that the 2024 we see in this episode cannot be the timeline that is in now what we'll call the real timeline, the one that actually happened, the prime timeline, you know. Unless their time travel rules are inherently somewhat random in what sticks and what doesn't, and time is very much in flux. You can do that, but I think it still causes narrative problems with your story, where in time travel, only the things you want to matter and want to have consequences will, and nothing else will. Like, you come up with narrative problems at that point, especially for something like Star Trek, which is very big on that big space opera, you know, that continuous sort of thing. My problems with the time travel are Guinan does not remember Time's arrow. There are other things, but that big one. Because TNG Picard never went back in time for the course of that episode. Now, the villain in Time's Arrow is completely independent of the Federation, and the Picard and all that stuff. Either, or they're not, and they never went back in time in the first place to, like, harvest the homeless people. Which either means there are extra people living in San Francisco that would change the course of history, or, more likely, there was, from Earth's perspective, and San Francisco has just constantly had a plague for, like, 100, 200 years, whatever, that's just never resolved, and that's in a major American city, that if San Francisco had some sort of curse of San Francisco, I think would have an effect on the world. But it also means that the Guinan Picard interacts with is not the Guinan from the future. Is not the Guinan from the Prime timeline. Now, Guinan could remember these events because of weird Elorian-ness. Probably not, you know, there's precedent. I'll admit, there is precedent for that. I'm gonna have to try and remember specifics. There were a lot in this episode. But, like, the bullet holes in Chateau Picard that are the same bullet holes that his family discovered moving into the chateau. Yes, that works. It doesn't work that Picard remembers those events, because he would be from a timeline where he never went back in time. He would have grown up in a separate timeline. One in which Time's Arrow did happen. And of course, I said before, this opens the door to so many time travel episodes not happening or going different. If all our yesteryears doesn't happen, actually nothing goes wrong. If it does happen, I can't see Kirk letting that American pilot go free. They'd probably shoot him on the spot and be like, yeah, you know, we're the evil timelines. Janeway, if she even made it to the Delta Quadrant, went back in time loads. Isn't there a guy who was responsible for the microchip revolution directly because of the actions of Voyager? I want to say this is the case. I have a model of the ship. Maybe it was incidental. The hollow emitter, again, from the Doctor, exists because 26th century people came to Voyager, which was lost in the Delta Quadrant because it was chasing the Maquis. The Maquis exist because we made a treaty with Cardassia. The Confederation didn't make a treaty with Cardassia. They obliterated them. The Maquis have no reason to exist. Voyager has no reason to be over there, to be, chasing Maquis. It has no reason to go to the Delta Quadrant. It's, Star Trek's always kind of weird about, everyone exists in the Confederation who exists in the Federation. They just do, despite everything that's changed. Here's a fact. Khan wouldn't exist. If the only reason we're saying Brent Spiner's character created Khan was because he lost everything, then Khan doesn't exist. Which means Strange New Worlds Ortega's doesn't exist, which means everything Strange New Worlds does that Ortega's does would be different. There's like another direct line you can make. Will Wheaton takes that girl with her. Well, no, I guess she does escape her father in the proper timeline. That two-parter is a guilty pleasure. Future's End, thank you. I can never remember its name. I like it. It's a good one. It's got the lovely scene about there are some things that are worth giving up cigars for. I don't know why I bring that up. Actually, I would have, I'm even going to use the words mad respect for Rios's actor. I'm afraid I don't know his name. If he did a parody of the there are some things worth giving up cigars for, about how he left to live in the 21st century specifically for cigars. And like everything Mark Twain highlights is like inherent problems with humanity. Is Rios is like, that's why I went back in time, you know. And that's one of those things where conceptually I love the idea. It's happened now, you know. He fell in love with the 21st century, but like a comic skit of like, well, I guess cigars are worth giving up a lot for kind of scene. He does the voice and everything with Mark Twain. God, that would be wait, but yeah, this, I mean, there were very good moments. I think the 5-minute pep talk is the most Star Trek thing that ever happened. I don't think the writers realize it, but it's one of the greatest Star Trek moments. Q, as I said, his whole thing is wonderful. Both of them are kind of undermined by the greater show, like what happens surrounding those scenes. Picard getting hit by a car, or even, you know, the bit about it doesn't all have to be a big galactic threat, and then Picard literally goes and solves a big galactic threat. Or the greater context they're in, either the structural problems I'm about to get to, or like Q has a wife and kid. I guess they're not around. Sure. But, yeah, I mean, I at the beginning, I don't know if you were here, Ukrainian Scrim Show, I really dissected the structure of Picard's 10 episodes and why it doesn't work. So that's a big problem. You know, structurally, there are significant structural problems in this story. There are significant problems in this story, like, you know, the supposed beauty of Tallinn, whose name I can legitimately only remember because it's the capital of Estonia, like meeting Renee and being that guardian angel. I would rather die. And like, you know, imagine from Renee's perspective, all this happening, I couldn't imagine living after something like that. Especially with how insecure with herself she is already, or she was at that point. Like, someone going in being like, hey, I've watched you literally your entire life, and I've seen your innermost personal events, and I know your innermost personal beliefs and thoughts. It's like, without even saying how much she knows, just that constant thought of how much does this woman know? Is she watching me now? Renee doesn't know she died. Like, yeah, and the filler, you know, the characters I just don't like. God, why couldn't Raffi have left? You know, I'd even have taken Rios worst captain over Raffi. No, Rios would have probably shared a cigar with Riker or something. Like, I dodged that scene. But there were problems. Yeah, worse than season 1, definitely. Season 1, it's been a while. I remember generally liking. It has problems. Yeah, it's got pacing problems, and it's got story problems. It's got a lot of problems, but I generally like what they do with the universe and kind of the like Cliff Notes version of season 1. Season 2 is the opposite. There are scenes I really like. I love the 5-minute pep talk and everything with Q at the end. I love those. The Picard's mother, as I said, outside the context of when it takes place, I think it's really good. They're not built, like, all of those things are built on very poor foundations and poorly told other scenes in build-up. But individually, they're good. It's the Cliff Notes version I hate, and, like, the little details I hate of this season. But thankfully, I think what they're trying to do with season 3 is very much that send-off. There'll be a bad big galaxy threat. We know there's going to be a big galaxy threat. It'll probably be superfluous, try and tell a theme that's not really landing. But if I walk away, what I'm going to remember about Picard is the 5-minute pep talk and how that beautiful scene with Q. And if the Next Generation characters all get, even if like everyone but one or maybe two get like a beautiful send-off like that, that is what I'm going to remember. And I'm also very fond of the Worf pacifism idea. I really hope they do it right, because it wouldn't even be that hard to do right, and I love that idea. I love it for the character, and it would not take much effort at all for it to make sense. Building off of all that Klingon corruptness, everything with Ezri, with Dax, Ezri Dax was the same person. Ezri Jadzia, yes. Ukrainian Scrimshaw, even though I pretty much dislike everything about Picard. Personal opinion, of course. YMMV, I don't know what that means. The last scene with Q and Picard was actually really nice in Star Trek. Yes, I was very against. Alex is gone. Yeah, I was. Yes, the door closed. Q's death. I love as well that he died, but it was still I'll see you around. I'll be out there. Maybe, just maybe, I'll have enough energy to survive. It wasn't even like, he didn't say passing on. I don't remember his words. He said, like, I'm moving on. In your terms, I'm dying. For all we know, he's moving to the next stage. Like, there are plenty of people who have gone from, like, humanoids to gods. Even the Q. We don't see it, but it's referenced they used to be like us. He could be going to the next realm of, like, subspace, the layer up above us. It was very open-ended, but it was still very much like he died, but he's out there. It reminds me a lot of how they ended classic Doctor Who, of, like, just a little speech of, like, and again, when Chris Chibnall wrote the end of 13th Doctor, he wrote it thinking it was the last episode of Doctor Who. It was this is done now, but the Doctor's still out there. He's having adventures. But everything around it, yes, I am surprisingly loved it. They should have kissed. Ukrainian Scrimshaw, I don't know if you're a genius or not. If I was the director and you just came up to me with that, I would film it, but I would also expect not to use it because that might have ruined it. I liked how friendly Picard and Q were. I always thought Picard, and even the Federation as a whole, was a bit harsh on Q. Thinking back, I kind of like Janeway with Q, where I kind of remember her being more laid back, like he's a little rapscallion or whatever. Because Q's very rarely the real... Like, what does Q do? Hey, everyone, you're Robin Hood now. You're gonna go be Robin Hood. Like, yes, he has his villain scenes, but pretty much just Farpoint in maybe his second one, he's the villain. And all of the others, he's, for the most part, like... He's an annoyance, sure, but he's very rarely a danger or, like, a threat. Picard has a reason. I mean, best of both worlds. No, Q Who. Picard has his reasons, but I like that he's like, this is the end. I'm gonna let him die with someone. He's not gonna go alone. I like that. I respected that. It doesn't make sense. Like, Picard going in the past completely derailed Q's plans, but I like the idea. I almost choose to believe that maybe he was pretending, or like he went to the past too early, because I like that I like the story that this was Q's gift to Picard. He knew the pain he had and he was gonna lift it, and that version of this story is beautiful. I don't know why they had him say the line, no, he brought him back to the past himself. Like, the whole thing as well at the start, like, this is your penance. No, it's not. It's a gift. Like, well, I guess it's his own internal penance, but the way Q delivered it, so angry, so aggressive, like slapping Picard. Q was angry at what Picard did. That is the interpretation of that scene. Not Alex's back, not what was happening to Q, but I see how they want me to interpret it later, that he's angry at the situation he's in, but he's given, like, Picard's penance is his entire life up until this point. Between the tragic event and that moment, that's his penance, and Q's lifting it. I love that version of the story. Again, it's the greater context that doesn't work. I don't know if you've planted this in your mind. Now I feel like I feel like I've heard before that Picard and Q should have kissed, or that, like, they filmed that scene. You have to be planting that memory in my head, but I hope that's an outtake. I own it on Blu-ray. If it's an outtake, I probably own it. But I cannot wait for that to make it into Ryan Edits intakes, which if you don't know, great. Look it up, Ryan's Edits. He takes outtakes from Star Trek and seamlessly edits them back into the original scenes, and they're amazing. But yes, you know what? No, I think I know what you're reminding me of. If you've never seen it, Ukrainian Scrimshaw, I'm about to make your day. There's an outtake from Deep Space Nine. Hard to get a hold of. I think the only footage is like from a convention or something with the crowd reaction. Where you know the scene with Odo and Quark, where it's the last episode they're kind of saying goodbye. It's like he loves me. It was written all over his back. There's an outtake of that scene where Odo and Quark very passionately kiss. And that's the goodbye, and it's amazing. It's like the whole thing of like, what are you gonna say to me? Nothing. It's like, you don't have anything to say to me? Like, yada yada. And then it's a full-on, handsy, passionate kiss between the two of them, and they just walk off. Amazing outtake. That's exactly what I imagine here. Ukrainian Scrimshaw. Yeah, I didn't like the whole Q. Yes. You can read the chat log if you're watching this in the video, as a video. But the scene by itself was good, I think. The scene earned the whole thing I can't say with Alex here. It earned that to me. Especially with the vagueness, where it was very clear, like, no, this is it. But, and I very much struggle to see John Delancey coming back to the character. Because, you know, this was, hey, it's the last time we're seeing Q. John Delancey's old. He's not going to be around forever. It earned it to me. Like, yeah, it's opinion. You know, I'll get that. Your mileage may vary, thank you. But I didn't like it until that scene. It earned it. I think Picard did have problems as well. You saw it in this episode in my commentary. I have a problem, and it justifies it later, which you can do, but you still have to make it an enjoyable watch early on. I think I can choose to interpret a lot of these scenes. Some things like the slap, I don't like it now, knowing the full story, the intent, but I liked it as to show something is wrong. It's the same, dang it, Alex is here again, there's a certain character in an episode named after him, where in TNG, season 2, they're at an orchestra and he starts crying, and it's a moment where you're like, I remember watching that scene for the first time, it's just like, I was like, what? Like, it was like I think it's something I've seen the most in fiction, where I went, something is seriously wrong. And this had a similar effect, not to the same degree. But now, like, other things I can recontextualize, like, I can choose to interpret this as he is mad at the situation. The penance is, you know, Picard's self-inflicted penance. He was supposed to go back in time, just not at that moment. Well, if you interpret it like that, why is Q working to stop the Europa mission? Why? Perhaps it needs to happen for Picard to, you know, uncover these things, for Picard to come to terms with himself. It's a bit of a stretch Q would know that, because they're not actually omniscient. I might be willing to accept it, but why? Q tried to murder Picard in this season. He told Adam Zoom to run him over with his car and kill him. He sent Adam Zoom to go and shoot him with Picard. Like, I guess, yes, Q's actions in this scene don't actually make a lot of sense. This is actually kind of ruining it for me now. But if we just choose to ignore all that, what I'm going to remember from Picard are those scenes. Is really that... Yes, this is what I'm going to remember from Picard. It's almost the opposite of Strange New Worlds, which I by and large enjoyed. It definitely has its bad episodes. It had an episode so good I wrote "I am wrong" on a sticky note on my forehead. in a moment that it's probably like channel history. But what I remembered from Strange New Worlds, and I even brought this up in my review of the last episode, is the negatives. I don't remember. I remember Ghost of Illyria was good. Really good. I remember Spock Amok was much better than I thought it would be. But I don't really remember those episodes. I remember what they did to the Gorn. I remember the episode where they just go and murder babies for an hour. I remember the... I remember the little negatives and all the nitpicks. I remember, and I don't think I've talked about this before, Captain Pike being far too casual all the time, seeming grossly not negligent. It seems like he doesn't take the job seriously. Too much comedy, all the wrong lessons from Lower Decks. I read once an interview with Mike McMahon where he said Strange New World would actually often ask him to come in and write jokes into scenes. And I felt that, and it didn't work. My token example is the scene, I believe it's the one with Cybok, where at the beginning they're in Pike's quarters and he's making a meal or something, but it's the debriefing. It's the classic sit down, what's the threat, whatever. Which I remember isn't like an insignificant thing. It's not the end of the world, but it's kind of a big deal. I'm trying to learn and establish what's going on and have the little conference meeting, but the whole time they're like, oh god, this jambalaya is so good. It's like, man, what'd you put in this? It's like, no, you're basically you're peacekeepers here in a frontier federation that really is desperate for ships and spreading them thin, and this is a serious situation that you need to understand. And yeah, we can be lighthearted, but it was ruining it and distracting it. And as soon as I read that, I'm like, yes, they got Mike McMahon in to write jokes into this scene, and everyone made it worse. Not because Mike McMahon wrote bad jokes. He did it good. He just shouldn't have been asked to do it in the first place. The scene didn't need it. Maybe akin to how the Orville gets a lot better when they get rid of the mandate for a joke every page. And on the bridge, is it Ortega's or the other one whose name I never remember, who didn't get an episode? Leon. It's either, sorry, that is Ortega's, but it's, who doesn't get an episode. I think it's Ortega's, who was constantly, quipping and on the bridge and, real cocky and, real inappropriate situations. This is what I remember about Strange New Worlds. If I were to give it a score from 1 to 10, it'd be a 4. And it's a harsh 4, because it could improve a lot of these things and get so much better, but it's what I remember. Picard's the opposite. It deserves less than a 4. But those scenes are what I'm going to walk away and remember, which I guess it goes to show you what I was saying before. If they made the point of this series, the moral, it's the little people and the little moments that bring about utopia, it would have made it so much better. Because even if all the writing, the structure, the story problems were there, if it was poorly written and done, you would walk away going, that was a nice story and a beautiful message that is very Star Trek, done poorly. That is what we're doing with the other things. We're walking away. And those moments were actually done well, but not in the greater context. It's what's happening. They justified and nailed their core. That why is Q doing what he's doing and what is happening? And how do we save Renee? They nailed those cores, and that is why we're walking away satisfied, I'll even say. Strange New Worlds had great episodes, great scenes. Some episodes nailed its core, but as a whole, it fumbled its core in a lot of places, I think. And also, it had, which is, for Strange New Worlds, actually a positive, the very TOS, I'm running around willy-nilly without a care of the consequences of my actions and destroying a planet every week. I think the first 3 episodes, ended a civilization, if I remember rightly. But those cores, It's too quippy. It's too almost Marvel, but like in inappropriate places. The Ukrainian scrimshaw, the quip, it is invaded every aspect of shows and media and is inescapable. Like, I don't have a problem with it in the show. TNG, the cast there are plenty of moments where they're very, like, they're buddies hanging out. And this is very much what Stranger Worlds is going for. They're buddies hanging out. That is Pike's captaining style. Fine. Riker's captaining style is Pizza Riker. Alex just looked at me at Pizza Riker. Like, he's the jazz guy. Riker's a fun captain. Like, Riker's probably the closest to Pike. In an emergency situation, Riker is dead stare serious, and he's like, no, this is not the time for stupid jazz puns. This is not the time to be Pizza Riker. This is the time to be like Daddy Picard and, like, get things done. I regret saying Daddy Picard.
Why'd you say Daddy Picard? People are going to make fan art.
That's what you said, like Daddy Picard when we were watching it. That's what you call him when we watch. Like, is everyone else? He's like the daddy of the ship. He's Daddy Picard. But
that's in private when we're not being recorded.
It does sound bad now out of context. But anyway, circling back. This isn't making it in the videos. But Pike didn't do that. Pike didn't know when to set back. It's like Kirk, again, had a lot of these similar things. But, in Balance of Terror, the moment, like, that one ensign shows a hint of, like, prejudice against Spock because the Romulans look like Vulcans, he grabs his chair, spins him around, looks him dead, and gets up in his face and is like, there is no room for prejudice on this bridge, so if you're gonna keep this up, get the fuck off this ship. He's like, no, this is serious time. Immediately logs onto Tumblr. What would you do if in season 3 everyone just suddenly started referring to Picard as Daddy Picard? Like, there's no explanation. That's just what they do.
Papa Picard. Papa.
Papa.
Papa Picard.
Worf comes up and he's like, Papa. Papa Picard.
God.
Yeah, and I read a headline. I took a picture.
Hear me out. If Picard owned a pizza restaurant, it'd be Pepperoni Picard.
Papa Picard. That's Riker's pizza restaurant. Papa Picard.
Pepperoni Picard.
I'm also harsh on Strange New Worlds because this article I read, it's a picture of Anson Mount as Pike in, like, a black vest on the captain's chair. There are, like, no lights on. He's kind of backlit with fog. There are no lights on. He's got a very stern face. He's holding up, like, resting his arm on the chair, holding up a cage-style phaser rifle, jet black. And the headline is, Anson Mount says Strange New Worlds Season 2 will explore the limits of Star Trek's idealism. And I'm like, yeah, you're not gonna fix those problems, are you? I don't get why everyone's so fascinated with that idea. I understand as a writer, it can be limiting to, Gene Roddenberry's classic, there can't be internal conflict amongst the humans. I understand as a writer wanting to try something different. This is why Deep Space Nine really worked in part. It was different. It's what happens when we put this utopia in a dark place, and in a lot of ways, go against it. Nowadays, I could get why, Picard wanted to do it, but everyone is doing it. I think Lower Decks and Prodigy are the only two series that aren't, and if you break it down by season, season 1 and 2 of Discovery were very dystopian. They were kind of, let's get to utopia in theory, but they were not utopia, I think is the main point. Season 3 burned utopia to the ground, and I'll say did a good job rebuilding it, but yes, it did. Season 4 is, it's a threat, but yeah, that Federation's back. Picard, yeah, seasons 1, 2, and 3 are the adult drama, that dark, gritty, yada yada. The whole premise of season 1 is that the Federation acted non-utopianly. That's the whole premise. Yes, it was the movies that set up what happened to Romulus, but it was Picard who decided how did Starfleet react. I never made that video, that Starfleet never abandoned the Romulans. That might be the next video. But who's left? Yeah, Lower Decks isn't doing it. Prodigy isn't doing it, but to be fair, it is new. Strange New Worlds didn't do it, and that's why people loved it. People loved Pike almost because it was different, in that he was the first Star Trek character in modern Star Trek. He was from that classic, not even TOS, but as a whole, that classic utopian optimism, cheerfulness. He was great in season 2. In early Strange New Worlds, he was great, but then his, attitude, his captaining style stopped being, that moment's a bit odd. He probably should have done it there. And it started being a pattern of behavior. It started being a character trait that he doesn't take things seriously and is very flippant. And that can often be to his detriment. Like when he's talking to the guy they're standing on a comet that he views as God. Like they've shown up and are desecrating his God. He thinks that's ridiculous, because of course he does. But how does he react? He's like, hey, come on, we could talk this out, work together, reach some mutual understanding, It's you who's not working with us. It's like, he almost does the voice, like, yeah, of course that guy hangs up in his face. That was a moment for, not that. I don't know what, but definitely not that. And, there is an award in the Federation called the Christopher Pike Medal of Honor. This man does not justify a award that's a Medal of Honor named after him. He gets results, but yeah, and so Stranger Worlds going against that is weird. I think it's genetic engineering stuff, but we don't want another going against the Federation's idealism. Why can't we just have that? Yeah, maybe do it every now and then, spice things up. You can tell different stories. Deep Space Nine could tell stories that no other Star Trek can, and they're some of the best stories. But at this point, there's too much of the dystopia. Too much of the non-utopia, at least. And the shows that people are reacting the best to are Lower Decks, Prodigy, and Strange New Worlds. Those have been the 3 shows that have not worked against Utopia. Discovery, not talked about a lot, but nowadays, it's a lot of positive thoughts and stuff. Well, guess what changed between seasons 1, 2, and 3, 4? They're praising that it's not a big world-ending threat, because we want something new. Picard is the one that, if you don't like a Star Trek, it's Picard. Yes, there are other problems. If Picard was written as well as Deep Space Nine, I'd probably love it. Because Deep Space Nine justifies going against the Federation with how good it is. It earns it. And I'll say there are definitely moments that don't work. In 5 years, when we get to Deep Space Nine watch-throughs, you'll see that. But yeah. Speaking of Pike... Yep, there's no, I should have planned that better. If these were videos, that'd be a, no, hang on, let's rethink that sentence. Speaking of Pike, there are no Star Trek episodes until, 2 weeks from now. There's 2 gap weeks. Let me verify that. Yes, Picard Season 3 comes back on February 18th, PST, Pacific Standard, which I think is the time zone that they actually use to announce their releases, which is nice for me. But, wait, no it doesn't. It comes back on the 15th. I review it on the 18th. But in the 2 intermeeting weeks, if people want to join us, which I guess is literally just you, Ukrainian Scrimshaw, because who is going to watch this bit in the next week. I don't know. We're going to start on the 4th, so a week from today, same time, noon PST, with The Cage. The Cage, of course, the original unaired pilot. I don't know. You know this, Ukrainian Scrimshaw. We're going to start a TOS watch through with The Cage, and then we're going to do, I believe, Where No Man Has Gone Before on the 11th, which I think it's the first production order episode of TOS. Whatever that is, we're going to watch it. I think it's Where No Man Goes Before with Gary Seven. Not the Salt Vampire. Gary Seven. And then we're going to do Picard. And basically, every Saturday, there's not a new episode of Star Trek to review. We're going to watch TOS. And eventually, I'm going to find like a consistent time slot to do it in. Probably not Sundays, because then both my weekends are taken up. But yeah, we're going to do an agonizingly slow watch through of TOS. And at that rate, I'll die before we get to, like, Enterprise. But eventually, we'll get more consistent. And probably we'll do it a lot, because 15 years is a long time. Especially to get to, like, Deep Space Nine, you know, Voyager, Enterprise. We might mix things up. We might not stick with TOS. Maybe we'll bounce around. But TOS is episodic and very disconnected. So I can watch like an episode every 5 months and no one's going to get lost. Ukrainian Scrimshaw. For me, Picard, Strange New Worlds, and Disco are just too produced. Every hair in place, too quippy and jokey, too unprofessional, everyone is friends, way too much drama, etc., etc. Lower Decks will become a classic, though. I notice you skipped Prodigy, but yeah, I thought Lower Decks would be the Star Trek I see the most, just because of how quick and how light it is. So far, that's not proving the case, but definitely Lower Decks is great. I generally concur that there comes a point where visual quality that you have access to becomes too high, and it comes at the cost of your show. I don't think this is inherent. There's no reason, like, if TNG looked like a modern produced show, and that was the only difference, it would be worse. There is no reason. In fact, it would probably be better. But, I've noticed it. With Doctor Who, I read recently, 9th and 10th Doctors, most of 10 at least, are not in HD. The first HD episode was like the second to last David Tennant special or something. They're not in HD. And I thought that was just like a times thing. It maybe in part was. But I learned Russell T. Davies, the producer, actually was actively against HD Doctor Who, which it definitely could have gotten by Tenet. It was a worldwide phenomenon. He thought it would degrade the show in some way, like the expectation of, I don't know, the monsters of the cinematography or whatever. It would degrade the show, and Doctor Who would be better in standard definition. That was like the highest you could go without getting worse. And I notice at the 11th Doctor, there's a change where there's a lot of times it does become very much, how do we make this look good? And it shows, like, I always picture Vincent and the Doctor, or maybe it's even the first one, where, like, they gloss over the sunflowers and things, it's all pastel, it's like, it becomes distracting that I'm noticing your director wanting to stand out and spending, like, 3 hours on this shot, and it takes me out of it. And when I watched the trailer for the David Tennant specials coming up for the 60th, it was weird, in part because seeing Donna, David Tennant, and, like, Donna's mom in HD is weird, because they're not people who exist in HD. They exist in 720p. But also, it was too much. It was very saturated, very extraordinarily high. Like, that's some good Disney money right there. You can see the Disney money, but I was like, oh, it's too good now. And, if you can make a good show underneath it, then yes. I don't think I've ever hit a point where, like, Discovery or Stranger Worlds or even Picard are made worse. The good scenes are made worse because they look good. For example, that scene with Q, not once did I think about the special effects in taking me out. I actually thought it was a really nice looking scene. It was a great setting for it and everything. Like, yes. I think it worked there, if you have a great show. But in the middling bits, I'm going to notice the production quality. No, not even the production quality. Specifically, the post-production quality. And I do think it takes away, and I don't know why. Because I also would like things brought up. I'd love HD Deep Space Nine. Those AI restorations and stuff. Classic Doctor Who. I can't wait. They're colorizing some episodes. Go right away. There's definitely a low bar where it'd be nice if you raised it to at least, like, Enterprise or 9th and 10th Doctor. That should probably be the low bar, but I don't think the high bar should really be much better. I think episodes like Blink, which were those standard definition Doctor Who, that are artsy and have a lot of directing with, like, there's an angel, someone walks in front, there's it not. It's a very directed episode, Blink. I think it looks better than Vincent and the Doctor, which is a very directed episode. Maybe it's real scenes, like when he's in the museum. It doesn't look any worse when Vincent van Gogh is in the museum. It's the same quality, but I don't notice it, so maybe it's something about, like, those nature fake pastoral fields. But you also come to the problem more, I think, of, I said a lot, the special effects looked bad, in a lot of the end of Picard. When they look good, it works, but, if that thing with Brent Spiner, where he was in the forest with the army, was in Doctor Who in 2007, yes, 2007. First off, it wouldn't have looked as bad simply because even though it looked bad, it's not in good quality. But it also wouldn't have stood out as much. Like, don't get me wrong, Enterprise, early Doctor Who, like, they have bad CGI. The early 2000s is full of horrific CGI. But there's definitely a line where I think it's to the detriment of the show. I don't think you need more than 720p. And even at, like, 1080p, you don't really need to change how you're filming it. And it's important that Oh, wait, if I skip something? I have. Ukrainian Scrimshaw, you have hit on a crucial point that I think many people miss. The level of detail dictates unconsciously how your brain will interpret what you're seeing. Lower definition and lower frame rate signals to you that this is not real and almost daydreamy. And it's important that directors, editors, and DP get that correct. Plus some of the hokiness of the effects props add to the lovability of the show. I don't want to say that, because I think that's only true retroactively. I'm watching, like, 60s, even 70s 60s Doctor Who, when Alex and I go, we're like, oh, that's really impressive, actually. It looks shit, but the way they took a photo of this wood carving to be a city, like, that's really well done. When you consider the craft, what had to go in. When I watch, like, 70s, 80s Doctor Who, okay, there are definitely low bars. But, yeah, it's like, oh my goodness, that green screen's, like, so awful. It's kind of 70s Who laugh. Or even, like, yeah, that's a bubble wrap monster. Sure, it can be charming. In that 2000s Doctor Who, I think bad 2000s CGI doesn't do it for me. That's just bad. In 40 years, maybe it will. Maybe it has to be before your time. I don't know. Like, but nowadays, in 40 years, if we have, like, oh, you can't see this, some, like, ultra amazing, I don't know, like, even better fight effects, maybe I'll look at these awful scenes in Picard and be like, remember when we used green screens? Like, that was funny, wasn't it? And maybe my kids will be like, oh, wow, like, if you think about it, putting an image over just, like, green, that's really clever, Like, maybe they'll be born after green screen. They probably will. Not, low budget will do it, but no one big will do it. I think it's only true retroactively, so I don't like to say it adds charm. But yeah, well, there are other things like the tricorders in this series are in Star Trek as a whole. They are Samsung flip foldable phones in cases. Because of the quality of the show, I can see that. Knowing it, if you see someone looking at a tricorder, it is a phone. My phone has a beefy case. It's got a beefy case. It looks like a tricorder now. But, like, retroactively, it makes the technology look wrong. It was always a tablet. Like in TNG and everything, it's always a tablet. I mean, functionally, I grew up with tablets and smartphones. I didn't really, but by the time I got around to TNG, they were ubiquitous. I never looked at a data pad or something and went, that's just an iPad, where that's the consoles are just like a touchscreen, even though they are. They look like modern touchscreens. But because it's literally like the Samsung S10 Foldable Plus, I'm like, that's a Samsung S10 Foldable Plus. Hey, love your stream and hearing your opinions as usual. I gotta get out. Great vid. Yeah, it's lovely chatting with you every time. We're like an hour more than the episode's done, so I'll probably wrap it up as well. But audio quality, video quality, in modern television is very interesting. I need a Deep Space Nine. I need someone with like Deep Space Nine's quality to come around and do it in HD. But that's Vincent and the Doctor, that there are episodes like that. It's the middling bits that aren't the heights that it brings it down. Whereas an episode in Blink, the whole thing works, even when it's super directed. But yeah, we'll wrap things up. Thanks for joining us. I will hopefully see you next week for The Cage. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.